All right, and we are live on Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, and YouTube. We've got the usual crew here, Dennis, Tony, and Matt. They're on the bottom, and we are joined by a special guest. I am going to do my best to not freak out too much. We've got the best running back to ever play college football, and in the great history of the Ohio State Buckeyes, Archie Griffin himself. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to join us. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fine, Matt. It's a pleasure to join you guys, and been looking forward to this.
As are we. So I mentioned you are a huge, you have a huge connection, obviously, to the Ohio State Buckeyes. Winning two Heisman's there. Again, one of the best running backs, I would say the best running back to ever play there and in college football. And as an Ohio State fan, I feel like we kind of take for granted how successful the program has been here the past couple of years, where that really kind of started with you and Coach Woody Hayes. And I know you've got a lot of great stories about Coach Woody Hayes. What was it like playing for him?
Well, it was great playing for him, but it didn't start when I came to Ohio State. It started well before that. As well, when you look back, you go back to the Hop Cassidy years back in the '50s. I mean, those were great times. And Hop Cassidy was a Heisman Trophy winner, and he played on some great teams, and they did some wonderful things. Then you look at the '68 team that won a national championship with Rex Kern and Jim Otis and John Brockington and Jack Tatum and all
the
those
super
guys.
sophomores
there were some
there,
great
right?
teams before I got there, but I'm happy that I had the opportunity to go to Ohio State University and play on some great teams and play for Coach Woody Hayes. Woody Hayes was a great coach, no doubt about it. I mean, in my mind, he was just like a father to me, and he's a guy who I think about every day, and I think about him every day just because there's something that he may have said during the time that I played for him or during the time that I was around him that was pertinent to today. I mean, things like that just come up all the time, and he comes to mind on a lot of different situations. And what I really liked about him and why I really liked playing for him was because he was a guy who really, really got excited about football games, and he got excited about his players, and he wanted to make sure that we were the best that we could possibly be. He was a guy who really, really cared for people, and that's what I appreciated most about him. You know, a lot of people thought of Coach Hayes as being rough and tough, but he was a guy who really, really cared a lot about people. He wanted to see you be successful, not just in the game of football, but academically, in life. And he always wanted to make sure that he would make a positive impression on you. And one of the things that he did for me was he always talked about paying forward. And a lot of people hear about paying forward to this day. But Woody Hayes started that. He talked about paying forward way back in the '70s. Every year that I played for him, he talked about paying forward. And he just didn't talk about it. He did it because he got out in the community and did things to help other people. And he certainly encouraged all of us who played for him to do the same thing. And I think that's one of the reasons that you'll find a lot of guys who had the opportunity to play for Coach Hayes are doing great works in their communities.
Yeah, you know, Woody is such a legend in college football in Central Ohio. So, what are some?
I lost your volume. I can't hear you for some reason.
He said Woody Hayes is very well known in Ohio. He's a legendary figure in Central Ohio.
So, what are if you had to if you had to impart one lesson onto young people today that Woody taught you, what would that be?
Oh, could you still not hear him?
I can't hear Dennis, but I'm gonna push. Oh, go ahead now, Dennis. See if I can hear you.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Hang on, let me try this really quick. Let me see. Try that, Dennis. See if you can hear you now.
Can you now, Archie? Still no? Can you hear me,
No.
Matt?
I can hear you. Dennis asked what is one of the best lessons that Woody has passed on to you? What you can share, like a lesson that you could show other people now, something that you learned from him.
Well, the one that stands out of my mind is what I talked about earlier, to pay forward, because it's important for us as human beings to do things to help others. Woody got it from Ralph Waldo Emerson's essay on compensation, where he talked about paying for doing things to help others, and Woody just passed that all on to us. And I know that the players who played for him, like myself, are doing the same thing in the communities and in the places that they work, those type of things. But that's the lesson that really, really stuck with me. The lesson about hard work, being the best you can be. I mean, that's automatic. And Woody certainly taught all of us that. But that lesson that really sticks out in my mind is paying forward, helping other people, being able to give and making sure that you're impacting somebody else's life.
I have to imagine that playing in the Horseshoe has got to be one of the greatest experiences you've ever had. What is it like playing there? Being a player and being as good as you were, like what is it like being there? All those fans. I have yet to be able to see a game at the Horseshoe, which I hope.
Oh man,
I know. But what's that experience like? I know. Trust me. I know.
It's a wonderful experience, and I grew up here in Columbus, and when I was young. In junior high school, middle school. I didn't live too far from the stadium. I lived out in the Linden area, and so I remember we used to come over to the stadium and try to sneak in the games at times. And sometimes we were successful, sometimes we weren't. But ever since then, I've been a staunch Ohio State Buckeye fan. And when I got the opportunity to go to Ohio State, I couldn't pass that up. My mother and father certainly wanted me to go to Ohio State, and one of the reasons they wanted me to go to Ohio State was because they'd be able to see me play. And one of the reasons I went to Ohio State because I wanted them to see me play. But Ohio State has been a great program for years and years, and having been a part of that and being able to play in that stadium, it's been very, very special. One of the things that I always think about during my time at Ohio State is that we were very fortunate that class that came in the fall of 1972. It was only about 17 of us. It wasn't a big class at all, but we never lost a game in Ohio Stadium, and I think that's very special. And I think that's one of the reasons that the fans are so fond of that team during that time. Because they never saw us lose in Ohio Stadium. We had a great time at Ohio State. We had 40 wins, had 5 losses and 1 tie, but we never lost in Ohio Stadium. And that's something that all of us are extremely proud of.
I can imagine. How great is it to take it to Michigan every single year? Like, how great does that feel?
It's a wonderful feeling to beat Michigan every year. We didn't beat them every year. We had a tie with them one year. In 1973, it was a 10-10 tie. As a matter of fact, the Big Ten Network did a show on that tie. It was called The Tiebreaker. And being on that show, there were teammates of mine and guys from the Michigan team that were on that 73 team. And we were having dinner together and talking about the game. Well, if you watch that show, you'll know that those guys are still upset today because when they had to vote to see who would go to the Rose Bowl, the Buckeyes went to the Rose Bowl, and that team from up north didn't go again, and they were really, really upset about that fact to this day.
Yeah, I feel like
I
feel like I committed a cardinal sin by actually saying the team name too. So now I feel bad about that. But I need to watch that. I don't know if you've seen the documentary they did mostly about Woody Hayes and kind of the rivalry that became of the team up north in Ohio State. I think it's on HBO called The Game, which is obviously the name of the rivalry. It's a very interesting watch indeed. So you are the only player in college football history to win 2 Heisman trophies. Doesn't seem like anybody's ever come close or possibly ever will. How we hear the cliched answer from athletes that we always want our records to be broken. I imagine that's something that's going to be really cool for you to hold on to for probably forever.
Well, Matt, I would never say forever. Matter of fact, I thought by now that somebody would have won 2. The way I look at it is I won 2, so I know there's somebody else out there who's going to win it again. But when I think of that record, it just reminds me of my teams and the teams that I played on. I always feel that I was fortunate. I was in the right place at the right time with the right people to make that happen. And when I talk about that, I talk about having a coach like Woody Hayes and the people who coached me in the backfield and also playing with the guys that I played with. I played with a super backfield and Pete Johnson and Cornelius Green and Brian Bashnagel. We had a wonderful time playing at Ohio State behind those big lines that we played behind. Guys like Big John Hicks, Kurt Schumacher, Doug France, Steve Myers, all those guys that I named were all Americans. So you can see why they were able to open up a lot of holes for us to run through. And we just did our job, and we let the chips fall where they may. And fortunately, the Lord blessed me with winning 2 of those Heisman trophies as a result.
Archie, if I can jump in here, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
You had said that you thought for sure that somebody else would have done it by now. Is there a college player that you can think of that you would have thought for sure, like if somebody was going to do it, is there one guy that stands out in your mind as an elite college player that could have won 2 Heismans?
Well, when you think about it, I got to think of all the Heisman winners that won it. Tim Tebow, he won it, I think, as a sophomore. And one of the reasons I think that somebody will win it twice is because people are winning it as freshmen, as sophomores, and they've got to stay around 3 years. So I figure that if they stay around long enough, they'll have that opportunity to win again. But I thought Tim Tebow was one who would win it twice. He was one, but then there's some great running backs that played the game that I thought would do it as well. I mean, when you look at all the great running backs that played in the 70s and 80s, now it seems to be a quarterback award.
Yeah, I thought Billy Sims might win it after he won his first one. I thought he had a good chance, but he didn't kind of pan out that senior year.
Dennis, I still can't hear you.
Man, what is going on?
He said he thought that Billy Sims might win it a second time.
Yeah, and he's one that I thought would have won the award twice. I mean, Billy, he came and played at Ohio State back. Was that 77? I think somewhere in there.
Was that the Uwe von Schaman game?
He was a great running back, not only in college but also professionally as well. So I mean, he certainly had the talent to do it, and a lot of those guys had the talent to do it. For some reason or other, it just hadn't happened. But I do think that somewhere along the line that will happen.
All right. Well, since Dennis is, I don't know why you can't get him. He wanted to ask.
I'm sorry, Dennis.
You still own the record for the most rushing yards at Ohio State, and I feel like it's one of those records that will stand the test of time. Do you agree with that?
Well, I tell you, I would agree with you mainly because I would say that it already stood the test of time. I mean, it's been 45 years since I left Ohio State playing football, and I don't know how long you want to say the time is, but 45 years is a pretty doggone long time. So even if somebody comes out and breaks it next year or the year after, it still stood the test of time. It'll stand the test of time. But do I think somebody else gonna break it? Yeah, somebody break that. Somebody break that. The only problem you're having now is when I played at Ohio State, as we ran the ball a lot. They don't run the ball as much as we ran it back then. And that's not saying that running backs aren't going to get the number of carries that I got, because there will be running backs at Ohio State that get the number of carries that I got, because people don't realize that, people thought I ran the ball 30 times a game. I may have only run the ball 30 times a game once or twice at the most. There'll be other people that'll run the ball more than I have run the ball, and they'll play more games than I played because they're playing more games today than they were when I was playing.
Dennis, you want to see if that fixed it right there?
Can you hear me yet, Arch?
Dennis, I hear you now.
All right. So other than yourself, who is your favorite Ohio State running back?
Oh man, I got a lot of favorite running backs, man. I look back and you think about the guys after me. One comes to mind is Keith Byers. Certainly was a great running back at Ohio State, and it was great that he was selected to be in the College Football Hall of Fame, will be inducted this year. Everybody remembers him for that Illinois game where he ran, I don't know, was it a 70, 80-yard touchdown with one shoe on.
Yeah.
But he was terrific running back. Then you certainly Eddie George and Eddie was fabulous. I mean, Eddie had it all going for him. I mean, his eye speed, I mean, everything. Then the one guy that people don't talk about much is a guy that I really, really love seeing run the ball at Ohio State. And I don't know if you guys remember him or not, but Carlos Snow. You guys remember Carlos Snow?
Out of the
You're too young.
Cincinnati Academy of Physical
That's right.
Education.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep. He
For
was
25.
That's right. He was one of my favorite running backs. And I can go on down the line. Tim Spencer, I mean, fabulous running back. We've got a great history of running backs and the recent guys, Elliott and Dobbins, and I mean, just going down the line. We've had a great group of running backs, and Ohio State can be extremely proud of the running backs that's come through our university.
So back in '75, Archie, when you were going for Heisman #2, at any point did you tap Woody on the shoulder and say, "Hey, Coach, it's only one more yard. Don't give the ball to Pete. Give the ball to me"? I mean, he had 25 touchdowns season.
We had our roles. We had our roles. Pete led the country scoring for 2 straight years, and before that, Champ Henson, who was the fullback, he led the country in scoring because they were the guys that were going to get the ball when we were in short yardage or when we were on the goal line. They were going to get the ball. Woody had this formation called robust, and it was a T formation. The fullback would line up in the middle, and myself and Brian Bashnickle would line up on the sides of the fullback at the halfbacks. Well, our job was to block and get the fullback into the end zone. And we had some great fullbacks, and they got into the end zone quite a bit. My job was to run the ball up and down the field, and then when you got in short yardage or goal line situation, Big Pete was going to score, or Champ Henson was going to score, or whoever was playing the fullback position was going to score. And that's just the way it was, and that's how his offense ran. And I was happy with it because I had a big role in it. Pete had a big role in it. Brian Bashnickle had a big role in it, and that's one of the reasons I think that our backfield was so good because we had those guys with a quarterback like Cornelius Green, who was magical with the football, running the option. I mean, it was really hard to stop.
One of the things you hear a lot of players talk about when they first go into college football is the speed of the game changes from high school to, say, your freshman year. How long did it take you to kind of get adjusted to the speed of the game when you started playing?
That's a great question, but in reality, I don't care what level you play at. That speed of game is going to change when you jump to that next level. Because when I went from little league to high school, speed changed. When I jumped from high school going into Ohio State University, no question about it. The speed of the game changed, and the field got a lot smaller because of the speed of the game. And then when I left Ohio State and went into professional football, the speed changed again, and the field got even smaller. And as far as how long did it take me to adapt to that, it didn't take that long to adapt to it because, I was playing with guys who were faster. And they were part of the reason that the speed changed and that the field got smaller is because of their speed. And I had to just make sure that I was keeping myself in great enough shape that I could match their speed so that I could keep up.
Well, that's awesome. I know that we only have you for a limited time, Archie. So anything you want to say before we let you go?
Well, I appreciate you guys having me. The game of football is a great game. It's a game that I learned so many lessons from. The will to win, being able to cope with pressure, getting along in team situations, all which are very, very important. But that one lesson that I learned from the game is that you get up after you get knocked down, and that's so important in life. And so if I could pass anything on to anybody about the game, is that you learn some valuable lessons from the game that I had the opportunity to play, that game of football. So I'll always appreciate that. I'll know that it'll always be something that's made a big difference in my life. So again, I thank you guys for allowing me to come on and share with you.
Well, it's been our pleasure, and perseverance is certainly a trait I think that all of us will try to develop in our children. It's one of the main keys to success.
Absolutely. And in these times that we're in right now, that's so very, very important. So let's keep that in mind as well.
Definitely.
Right. Thank you so much, Archie.
Thanks.
Thank you, Archie.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Archie.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Go Bucks.
Go Bucks.
All right.
Whew. All right. Well,
all right. I didn't think I had a bucket list, but I think I just have something to check off it.
Yeah, that's cool. That's definitely cool.
yeah. I'm still kind of geeking out right now. So does anybody else want to talk about something? Give me a minute to catch my breath.
I want to talk about Dalvin Cook. I want to talk about Dalvin Cook's holdout.
Go ahead.
I feel like, and maybe you guys can help me with this, I feel like Dalvin Cook has positioned himself perfectly to have a holdout. I mean, ever since, what was the first one? Was Le'Veon Bell the first holdout? Is that the first time this ever happened, really?
Well, he skipped a whole season, and then Zeke obviously held out a little bit last year.
But was Bell the first?
In the history of time, Emmitt Smith.
No. Okay. Emmitt Smith. I'm listening. I'm not talking. Go ahead.
No, I mean, Emmitt Smith held out. That he actually let the Cowboys start the season. They lost a couple of games, and Jerry Jones buckled like a cheap suit.
He did. He wrote a fat check and was like, okay.
Wrote a fat check. So, but I feel like that was in an era where running backs had more leverage. I'm not sure this is going to be great for Dalvin Cook, especially considering they changed the CBA, and the team can't reverse the fines if they decide to fine him, which means,
I was under a different impression. I was under the impression that they could reverse the fines.
No.
Maybe I should relook at that.
That's the change. They no longer will the fines be undone.
Yeah. Okay,
That
I'll
was,
relook at
the
that.
CBA makes it more punitive for missing mandatory off-season things in the
My
new
biggest
contract.
argument for a Dalvin Cook holdout is looking at the 2021 free agent class. I mean, Derrick Henry, Alvin Kamara, Cook, Aaron Jones is a free agent. Marlon Mack's a free agent. Dalvin Cook's in a position, I think, where I think it's fair for him to ask for a contract extension. And I think if he waited till the end of the year, I feel like Dalvin Cook's in a position where there would be so much competition against him that he wouldn't have any more leverage. I mean, let's say that Tennessee doesn't sign Derrick Henry to a deal. Let's say Derrick Henry is released to be a free agent. Minnesota's going to look at Derrick Henry. Is that wrong?
I don't think they bring in Derrick Henry. I think they bring in Dalvin Cook. So here's the one thing I was going to say about
Go ahead.
The Dalvin Cook thing. I think is a little bit different. Derrick Henry and Zeke Zeke came out beforehand, and Derrick Henry has now come out and said that he wants to set the market, right? Like Derrick Henry wants, he said, I think he wants a Zeke contract, or the Zeke contract's a start, is what.
Yeah, Zeke's contract is his floor.
Yeah,
I didn't see that. That's a problem. That's a huge problem.
Cook
Well, everybody laughed when he said it, so
Yeah.
That's a problem.
Cook has come out and said that he doesn't want that. He just wants to get paid due to the way that he is produced on the field. Now, granted, he's also been hurt
for
a
one
lot,
season.
Yeah, so he's not asking for Zeke or Henry money, which is why I actually think that he might get paid. Well, I
think he will get paid. I do think he will get paid.
He's being more realistic than – I can't say Zeke wasn't being realistic. I think he asked for his contract too early, but when he was on the field, he proved he was one of the most productive running backs in the game.
Right.
Derrick Henry, while he was great last year, he really wasn't good except for like the last 4 games of 2 seasons before that. He was really good toward the end of the season, did nothing at the beginning of the season. Now, last year, he proved a lot of us wrong that didn't believe in him, and he had a great season overall. Dalvin Cook, when on the field, is one of the most productive and explosive running backs there. That's the problem, though. He's not always on the field. Minnesota, the one thing reason I think they will pay him something is Mike Zimmer's fired offensive coordinators because they haven't run the ball enough. They're built around their running game, not around Captain Clutch, Captain Kirk. So I do think that they're going to end up paying Cook something. Maybe it's only a 1-year deal, like Matt just said, or maybe it's some kind of long-term deal. I think they've got if I remember correctly, somewhere a little over $20 million in cap space right now.
They have $11.5 million in cap space.
Wow, I don't know where I heard that at then, but 11.5 in cap space. So if they can work out some kind of long-term deal that gets him paid, like he said, he did not want to break the market. He said he just wants to get paid because he's actually making less than. I don't even remember what it was.
He's not making $1.3 million. It's nothing. It's $1.35 million. He's making no money.
When you look at it, I feel bad because I'm going to say this and Matt's going to correct me with the right stat, but I feel like the stat, if I remember correctly, I heard yesterday was, I don't remember the exact yardage, but he is right behind Christian McCaffrey in yards, like per attempt, per rush, all that stuff. He was way above everybody else. And the next was Derrick Henry. And I don't remember who was right after Derrick Henry, but it was CMC by a mile. And we all know that because of what he was able to do. But then it was Dalvin Cook. And then there was another separator for everybody else. So when he's healthy, he's proved that he can be a stud running back. Dennis, you want to add anything? You kind of were in and out there for a minute.
No, you guys pretty much covered Dalvin Cook.
I think that a $12 million a year deal is not crazy. I mean, I got the dogs. I don't know if you can hear that.
I don't know. I completely disagree. For that kind of a position and for a guy who has had one good season in 3, no. He has zero leverage. And in fact, if I was the team, I'd Melvin Gordon his ass.
If you were the team,
I'm
though.
not saying they won't.
But here's the problem. Stephon Diggs is gone. Is Alexander Madison is he a replacement to Dalvin Cook? I don't believe he is. I mean,
he certainly replaced the level.
Dalvin Cook missed 2 games last year, and Mike Boone was the hottest waiver wire pickup and had at least one incredible game.
And one not incredible game.
Well, it's Minnesota, so
you got to talk about Alexander Madison. Is like I just mentioned, though, they're a run first team, so he's gonna get the work, but he's not Dalvin Cook. Like I've seen just in a league that I was in the other day, the guy who actually owned Dalvin Cook and Alexander Madison. So I want to get your guys' thoughts on this because I actually thought it was a brilliant move on his part. So he owns Dalvin Cook and Alexander Madison. He was offered a high, because this team is not very good, a high-end 2021 first for Alexander Madison. I told him to accept that deal before that person pulled it off the table. Because Alexander Madison is at best, average running back. I don't think he can bring back anything for fantasy. And maybe they don't bring back Dalvin Cook. And maybe Alexander Madison is the running back for the Minnesota Vikings. I don't think he's going to do anything better than maybe a running back too. If you
the team wants,
you're talking about like those two guys are their only option. Free agents, Lamar Miller's still there, Devonta Freeman's still there. I mean, those guys are going to be willing to take a hell of a lot less than $12 million a year.
Miller,
all you got to do and put Freeman's not going to hold you up for $12 million a year. There's no market for him.
Well, but they wouldn't even take him to the Buccaneers because remember he said that Bruce Arians was like, nah, he wants too much money. What makes why is he going to change his mind to go to Minnesota?
Freeman's a good example. I remember my first episode with you guys. My very first episode, I praised Freeman. I was on the Devonta Freeman hype train. I'm willing to pound the table for him. And I was wrong. Like, okay, I'll take that. I was wrong there. Freeman's a good example, Fox. I mean, Freeman could take that job for a whole lot less money than Dalvin Cook. But here's the reality of the situation. The general manager just came out and said how much they like Dalvin Cook, how much they want to make a deal, how great he is on the field, and how much better he is off the field, how he's so good for their organization. They've gotten rid of Stephon Diggs. Okay, they drafted a rookie wide receiver. Honestly, but outside of that, I mean, the 34% of their passing plays are play action plays that runs.
You're completely misreading their offensive scheme. Who is their offensive coordinator? Gary Kubiak. Who did he study under? Mike Shanahan. What was Mike Shanahan's opinion of a running back? 100% replaceable. We went through this for years with Denver. My scheme is the star, not the player. Speaking of which, Gary Kubiak's best friend is John Elway. He can just get on the phone and say, hey, can you give us Royce Freeman for a bag of lint? And that guy's coming over. Then you have another guy that you can throw out there. Dalvin Cook, to me, has zero leverage. And if Minnesota pays him a huge contract, they're morons. The only way he might have leverage is if they start the season and go 0-3 and start thinking that he's going to be the answer to all their problems, which they play Packers, then they have Colts, then they have the Titans. So that could be a tough stretch to start out. But Dalvin Cook, if he thinks he has the kind of leverage, look at Le'Veon Bell ended up having to sit out a season, and it didn't work out for him. And he had been a heck of a lot more dynamic of a player for a longer amount of time. Ezekiel Elliott held out and managed to get it right before the beginning of the season. But he's another guy who's had a heck of a lot more of a track record of success in his time. Dalvin Cook was a gamble last year because you didn't know if he could stay healthy, and he didn't end up being able to complete a full season. He still only was able to play 14 games. So I don't think he has the leverage he thinks he has.
I agree with you on the leverage part. I never said he had leverage. I don't. You obviously, with the Broncos history and everything, you obviously know the way that Kubiak is. The one thing I'll argue is I do think that Minnesota is more in their window right now. I think that's why they re-upped Kirk Cousins. That's why they kind of went more offense. They're trying to figure out their defense. They're in that window. And you're right. Maybe Kubiak thinks that, hey, my system is the star or whatever. You're not winning games with Royce Freeman at running back. And I don't think Gary Kubiak is that conceited or full of himself to think that. You still need to have a good running back. Now, maybe that is Alexander Mattison. Maybe they truly believe in him. I don't know.
I gotta give it to Fox. For Fox's, I mean, Freeman is still a free agent, and Freeman is. That's Fox threw a curveball at me. Yeah.
But see, here's the thing.
Who else could? There's a bunch of other.
I don't think there's a bunch of other
they could trade for.
There's not a bunch of other. Fournette, he's available.
You're giving up draft capital as well on a team that might. I don't know. I would say, okay, what would you cap it at then, Matt? You seem to be the most pessimistic out of all of us on. I'm not saying that they're going to break the market for Dalvin Cook, but what would you say? They get a deal done. They figure out a way.
Haven't they already offered him 10, and he said he wanted 13?
13. I think 13 is reasonable.
They've made some overtures,
right?
That's why
so they're not that far apart.
I don't know. At some point in time, I take the "we'll win without you."
Well, and I could see. I think what Devontae Freeman was asking for from Tampa, I think, was $4 million.
No, they offered him $4 million, and he didn't want to take that.
No. Is it? Okay.
So you don't know where he exactly is, but my guess would be somewhere in the 6-7 range. And
so
I think you certainly think he's half as good as Dalvin Cook.
I'm sure. Well, every player's got to think they're the best, right? Or half as good as somebody. If you could get a 1-year deal out of Devonta Freeman, or again, I'm not going to say cap friendly, but it's not going to break the bank. Signing Dalvin Cook to say a 3-year extension. Which are you taking?
Well, how much? If they offered Dalvin Cook $10 million a year and he said no, then I'm moving on.
Well, he said the report that I saw, I think it was by Roto World, was he was asking between 11 and 13 million. That's
giving
not
those kind of contracts for running backs in the recent history has been a terrible idea.
Yeah,
especially someone who already has a checkered injury history.
I don't argue with that. So here's my question for you, Fox. I agree with you. I really do agree with you. Ezekiel Elliott's a perfect example. The man got paid, and a bunch of running backs on their rookie contracts outperformed him. We saw Todd Gurley. Now here's Ezekiel Elliott. So here's my question to you, Fox. What do you think we can do? Because I think we all agree that a running back's most productive years are those early years, that 1, 2, 3, those early years on that rookie deal. What can we do for running backs to make the deal more fair? Because they ask for this money, they hold out. Wide receivers don't hold out. Quarterbacks, I've never seen a quarterback hold out. Because they're getting compensated. Is there any idea that you have that we can?
You get compensated in the NFL on your rookie deal based on your draft position, and the fact that running back is such a disposable position is why you're not seeing them go high.
There's no negotiation. It's an arm's length conversation. There's those rookie running backs, as great as they are, Ezekiel Elliott, Christian McCaffrey. Just recently, they have no negotiating power out of the draft. Is there anything that can be done to give those elite running backs that we know are going to be given 20 to 25 touches a game. I mean, is there any way to compensate them moving forward? I'm asking you to make up rules, to make up contract situations for rookies. Is that that?
I mean, if you're asking me, I don't agree with you, so I don't see a problem. I'm not working to solve a problem I don't think exists.
Okay, I'm cool with that.
I think with rookie running back contracts, so there's a rule in the NFL that if you're so grossly underpaid at the end of the season, and typically it's a late round draft pick or undrafted free agent, after the season, the NFLPA, there's some rule in there where you're allowed to get additional compensation based on that previous season. I get you can't really do something super special for running backs, but I also understand that you can't, as a running back, you're not likely to get that second contract. So there has to be somewhere in the middle of that says, well, we understand. So you were making 800,000, you played really well. We're going to give you $1.5 million instead. Whereas a normal running back playing at an elite level is worth 7 or 8 or 10 or 12 million, but you run them for 300 carries for the first 4 years of their rookie contract, and now nobody will give them the second contract, so they're not going to get that $30 or $40 million payday.
Right. Where's the middle ground? That's
yeah. I think now the only leverage they have is to say, I'm going to sit out.
That's it. That's all. That's it. That's why I don't love the idea of Dalvin Cook not playing, but I get it. I understand. I mean, if he plays, they're going to run him 25 times a game. I mean,
I roster Cook in one league, and about 3 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago, I offered Raheem Mostert and a third for Alexander Madison and a second, which I thought was a fair deal. It was rejected without comment.
I would have rejected it.
But without comment,
everybody thinks Alexander Madison now has this. It's the same way, like.
But this was this was weeks before the Cook holdout.
Ooh, even worse.
Well, that's probably somebody that doesn't think Dalvin Cook can stay on the field.
I don't know. I feel like I disagree firmly with Matt on the running back thing. The one thing I'll say, Tony, is I don't think there's anything they can do, because didn't they just I could be wrong, but didn't they just agree to like new CBA terms here recently?
Yeah, that was just passed.
Yeah, just passed. It's a new 10-year deal.
That doesn't affect the existing stuff.
Right. But like, so what I was thinking of is maybe there's a way for them to put something in there where running backs say, there was a discussion, I want to say it was on NFL Network on Sirius XM. I want to say that's where LaDainian Tomlinson's at. I don't remember. I know LT was talking about it. And one of his things was maybe it's something where when a running back comes out, they only get like a 3-year deal in the first round, so that they get a chance to then kind of kick the bucket or kick the can a second time. Because you're still getting – you're still going to get those prime years afterwards, right? Like with Todd Gurley. I mean, yeah, he's still.
Go ahead. I love it. Go ahead. Come on.
That screwed him. It was not the workload. Like, people want to keep talking about all the workload. No, he had the knee injury, and you can't directly say that was because of the workload. We've seen other running backs who have had workloads that have not broken down, and we've seen it in the past. Look at LaShawn McCoy. LaShawn McCoy got multiple contracts. He was still good. Are we all saying that now CMC is going to come into 2020 and be a shitty running back? No. Oh, but because he got paid, he's a shitty running back now. Like, no. Zeke, yes, he had a bad year. I would almost think 90%.
But I mean, he didn't even have a terrible year.
And he didn't even have a terrible year. You're right.
Like, everybody said he has a bad year.
He ran for almost 1,400 yards and had twice as many touchdowns as the year before.
Saying you don't want to pay
that running backs suck after they get paid. Todd Gurley was not horrible after he got paid. He got hurt. Now, Le'Veon Bell, can you even blame that on Le'Veon Bell? He plays for probably the worst coach in the NFL right now in Adam Gase.
But he's proof positive that the holdout thing and thinking that's going to work out for you 100% doesn't. He ended up going somewhere that was a much worse fit, and now 1 year removed from signing that contract, he just makes me feel a well of sadness. And he ended up having to take less money per year on the contract than he would have gotten on the franchise tag that he passed on.
I agree.
My problem with what you guys are talking about is I think it's fundamentally unfair to lift one position up above others, especially a position that has proven time and again to be more disposable.
Agree with you on that, but there are guys who aren't. That's my argument.
But
and those guys actually, I had a different opinion when we talked about Ezekiel Elliott last year. He had proven his worth to his team. I thought he actually had leverage, and that's what ended up getting him a deal.
Okay, so then that's where our disagreement is, because while Cook's injury is my biggest thing, I agree with you on that, but I think when he's on the field, he's proved the Vikings do not make the playoffs without Dalvin Cook.
I'd take they barely made it anyway. I would take this same position. I would take this same position if you told me Derrick Henry was holding out, because while we've seen Derrick Henry was a more productive running back and actually carried his team further in the playoffs. He had them within a stone's throw of the Super Bowl and carried them past the New England Patriots and carried them over the corpse of MVP Lamar Jackson last year. So what I'm saying is he had shown flashes previous, and then he had one great year. If he tells me he's holding out for all-time money, I'm like, good luck, friend. Right. You got your franchise tag, you can eat it. Same with Dalvin Cook. Prior to last year, if we were talking about this a year ago at this time, that he was holding out for $10 million, we would have all been having a good chuckle for 30 minutes.
For Dalvin
Cook? That would have been last year, though. It's a different year. What he did
$10 million
last year
on Dalvin Cook's a bargain. I won't secede that. $10 million a year for Dalvin Cook is a bargain. I mean, the kid is a 3-down back. I mean, yeah, he has injury issues, but 34% of Minnesota's passing attempts are play action, and that's because Dalvin Cook is present. I mean, that kid can run the football. He's different. He's a separate level of talent, and I get you, Matt, that the risk isn't worth the reward. There's somewhere I'm not pretending that we should just go pay Dalvin Cook anything that he wants. I'm not pretending.
I guess I don't agree that he's a different level of talent either. So okay, we don't see the player the same.
Yeah, then we disagree. That's okay. I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you on that part of it, Tony. I mean, again, you talk about how Derrick Henry was just, I mean, granted, I'm looking at it fantasy-wise. He only outscored him by 20 points, and Dalvin Cook missed 2 games. So Derrick Henry, don't let his receiving stats last year fool you in him being a good receiving back. He's not. He is not a good receiving back. Dalvin Cook, as Tony mentioned, can do it all. I agree that if you can find a happy medium, I'm not saying paying him Zeke money or CMC money. I agree. He doesn't deserve that.
I agree
with
you.
Say the season comes around and they're like, hey, whatever. You wanted 11 to 13. We were offered you 10. We're going to give you 10-5 for the next couple of years. I don't think that's an overpay for a back that if he stays healthy, and I understand that's a big if he's able to stay on the field for 16 games the next 3 years in a row, you're looking at a guy who's going to be the leader of that offense. Because as Matt, you love to point out, and I'm only conceding this in this argument because I want to win the Dalvin Cook argument, they can't rely on Kirk Cousins. They have to rely on somebody else, which means it's Dalvin Cook.
I mean, if you think he's staying on the field, Dennis is muted. You actually are muted this time, not just.
Yeah, you're actually muted, not just we can't hear you.
All right, let's play some either or.
Yeah, right, Dennis, help us, please. Please help us.
Dalvin Cook or Joe Mixon?
Joe Mixon for me. I think Joe Mixon's the better runner. I go Joe Mixon.
I took Dalvin Cook.
What about you, Fox?
I would never take Joe Mixon for anything other than a prison lineup. Right. So,
okay, so Dalvin Cook.
No point in answering that question.
Dalvin Cook or Nick Chubb?
Dalvin Cook.
Oh, you cut to the heart, Nick Chubb. I got to do it.
Cook or Derrick Henry?
Cook.
Henry.
Cook or Eckler?
Cook.
Cook or Aaron Jones?
I would take Aaron Jones.
Cook.
Fox hates Cook. That's
Kenyon
what we're learning
Drake?
right now. Fox hates Cook.
Oh, Cook.
No,
Not
I
even
think
close.
I think he's fine, and he's in a great system for himself. But if you're asking a preference, I wouldn't draft him. I never have.
I mean,
don't have
so the
any-
argument you're making is that I just won't pay. I just don't think we should pay him. And the other side of the argument is, but he's in the perfect system for what he does, and he's going to clearly get the volume and produce. And your argument is just, but he gets injured, so I just can't. And at some point, you have to just say, do I want to take the chance on the guy that I know is going to produce at the higher level and hope he doesn't get injured? I mean, there's a reason Will Fuller keeps getting drafted, and he's going to. I think this is Fuller's year, and I fucking hate Fuller.
If you're, I assumed you were asking questions based on an NFL standpoint and not a fantasy standpoint. If he's in the Minnesota, we've already talked about it. He's probably a top 4 running back. Personally, I don't see him as a special player the way Tony does. I think he's more of a product of the system than you are, but that's partially based on the fact that for 30 plus years, I watched that system in place and watched people like Mike Anderson come out of nowhere and have 1,000 yards. I'm not sold that Dalvin Cook is something special. If he was in Minnesota, because of the opportunity and because of the system, if you're talking about from a fantasy perspective, I have no problem drafting him. But if I'm an NFL GM, I'm not paying him $10 million.
All right, so let me ask you this. Mike Anderson or Terrell Davis?
Davis.
But it's the same system, though. Why take the more expensive guy?
Davis, I would
because he's fucking better. That's why
I would disagree with you completely.
Okay, so let me ask
Terrell
you,
Davis.
Let me ask you one question then, Matt, because you're very much on the system thing with Gary Kubiak. Gary Kubiak wasn't his coach in 2017 when he was a rookie. When he exploded onto the scene, was by far the best rookie running back until he got hurt. So how can you say that it's because of the system? I don't even remember who the offensive coordinator was, but it wasn't him. It was Pat Shurmur, who is known to be more of a pass-friendly offensive coordinator than a run-heavy coordinator. So he looked good as his rookie season before he tore his ACL as an explosive weapon out of the backfield. Wasn't with Gary Kubiak. No ties to Gary Kubiak whatsoever at that point. So how can you say that it's just the Gary Kubiak system? That's my question.
I mean, you're asking if I think I saw brilliance in a 4-game sample size. I'm going to pull his game logs right now. He had one game where he had 22 carries for 127 yards.
Okay.
He had 2 games where he amassed 60 yards in a game, and he had one game where he had 97 yards on 27 carries. So
behind possibly the worst offensive line back then.
The fact that Fox pulled all of that data in front of him that fast makes me not want to fuck with him. Like, I don't want to fuck with you, Fox.
I mean, you're talking about he managed to go for 127 yards on 22 carries against New Orleans, who I love New Orleans for a lot of reasons, but not because of their defensive prowess.
Sure.
And then he managed to get 97 yards on 27 carries against Tampa Bay. He managed to get 66 yards against Detroit. He managed to get 64 yards against Pittsburgh. They went 2-2 in that time. I mean, he was fine, but are you telling me that 4-game sample size with that uneven level of production makes me think he's Gale Sayers? It does not.
I never said he was Gale Sayers, but he is a different running back. He is above average. He's more than above average. You're talking about him like he's just a little cherry on the top here. You're talking about him like he's Melvin Gordon in Denver right now. He's above that. He is a better than average running back. Well, that's because Matt Fox hates Melvin Gordon. That's why I'm going that route.
I volunteer him as though he's Marlon Mack in Indianapolis. I mean,
he's.
I mean, that was a great one for Matt. Hey, come on, defend Marlon Mack, Matt.
I love
I'm not defending Marlon Mack. Marlon Mack sucks. That's my point.
No, he just said he's Marlon Mack in Indianapolis.
Knock it off. Knock it off with the Marlon Mack stuff. Knock it off.
Marlon Mack is not good. You want someone to come on here and praise Marlon Mack? Go to this guy right below him.
We can talk about that later.
Good. That's why they drafted Jonathan Taylor.
But that's the point. That's the point. Dalvin Cook deserves a contract. That's the point of all this. Is Dalvin Cook deserves a contract. I don't know what that contract means. Does he deserve $20 million a year? No. No running back deserves $20 million a year. And we're learning that from Ezekiel Elliott. We learned that from Todd Gurley. Did I hurt your ears? I'm sorry. I got excited.
No, I was scratching my ear. I said Saquon Barkley.
Yeah, I saw you pour that way.
Oh, no, I was just scratching my ear.
But Dalvin Cook is a focal point. He is the focal point of Minnesota's offense. I mean, he is the guy. They're paying. Listen, if I'm Dalvin Cook and Kirk Cousins is getting paid $30 million a year, I want paid. That's all I'm saying. I want paid for my 25 rushes a game or 25 touches a game.
That's the only semi-compelling argument you've made, because if you were comparing him to Kirk Cousins' contract. Thank you.
Dalvin Cook is paying attention to Kirk Cousins' contract. That's another ripple in this whole thing. And that dude's getting paid way too much money. And it's not running through Kirk Cousins.
Hey, you're worth what someone's willing to pay you, just saying.
Oh,
I mean, that's the way it goes. And that's, that's the way it goes in the life of running backs.
Yeah, exactly.
Running back is not a position that we've seen over the long term that's been worth sinking that kind of money into if you want to win.
I get it.
Agree. I
think the other thing that I'm going to say in Minnesota's defense right now is universally there is a belief that the salary cap is going to come way down next year because it's based on revenue. If they think that the salary cap's coming down $30 million next year and they're looking at the contracts that they already have in place that they have to carry, do they want to sink themselves into a commitment of $10 to $12 million a year for a running back who he could be great, or let's all be honest, he could play 4 games?
True.
I don't wish him bad injury luck. I hope he stays healthy. I hope, he's been fun to watch in their system. It's fine. To me, it's not worth the gamble given the climate of football and trying to win as a team long term. If I'm a general manager, I can't be thinking about how I feel about one guy. I'm thinking about my team, and I'm thinking about next year and the year after.
And that's why
when you don't, you get screwed.
You do exactly like these teams are doing with the ability to get out of these deals. You either front load it or you do something where you only take a little bit of a cap hit, like Atlanta did with Devonta Freeman, and you get out of it. Therefore, you're doing exactly what you're talking about. You're getting the future, but you're also you're doing it for the now, but you're planning for the future. I'm not telling you to guarantee him like they did Kirk Cousins $11 million a year. You front load it this year. Say, hey, we'll give you $11 million this year, and if you prove you can stay healthy these 16 games, then we'll continue on with your contract of whatever we agree to pay you. If you don't, guess what? You're gone. We'll draft a running back next year. That's why I think we're all saying the same thing, just going about it different ways. None of us think he deserves to be paid as an elite running back. I'm not saying that. I don't think Tony's saying that. We know that you're not saying that, Matt. I just think he deserves to be paid better than the average and due to his level of production. Because while, again, the injury is the biggest question here. I don't think anybody can question his talent. He is a talented running back. He may not be the best. He's better than average. He falls in between the Zeke to Marlon Mack level, and he's definitely above Marlon Mack. Sorry, Tony.
Poor Marlon.
Hey.
So that's
this is why Tony took a couple months off of hanging out with us.
Exactly. Yeah, he hated
right. I couldn't take it anymore.
Let's not spend 30 more minutes arguing about Dalvin Cook, though. Matt, you brought up a very interesting thing, and Tony's crying, so we'll move past that here. I'll knock.
Oh, come on. Poor
I'm fine. Fine.
The preseason, there was a lot of talk yesterday, and I heard a lot of it today as well, that it may drop down to just 2 games with training camp starting in July. That is a lot of time taken away from these players to get ready. Matt, you kind of brought that up. So what was it that you wanted to talk about with that kind of going on right now with the NFL?
Well, I think there's a couple of things. There's been a lot of long-term talk. Can we get away with the shortened preseason? But obviously, because of the extenuating circumstances this year, if they're able to drop it down to 2 games, it's kind of like a free experiment for them to see how it goes. My thoughts have always been a couple of things. You can't find some of those diamonds in the rough if you don't have a couple of these preseason games where end of the roster guys get to go out and you see something. I know, Matt, you and I both share a love for Phillip Lindsay. if he hadn't gotten to ball out in the preseason, I don't know how close he would have been to making that roster. The other thing that's specific to this year, uh, that I think you also have to start thinking about in terms of guys that change teams to fundamentally different systems and the rookies that are coming in, they did not get the off season that normally you get. We didn't get the rookie mini camp. Those first year head coaches usually get an extra mini camp where they can pull their players in. That didn't happen. We didn't get the OTAs in June. Now they aren't doing any early July work. They're probably not coming back until training camp starts at the end of July. So they don't have as much time in there practicing and learning things. And if you're removing games, you're also removing a lot of game reps from these guys. So players that have a lot of talent or that we think went to a good situation for fantasy purposes might have real slow starts or might have stunted seasons this year because they just don't have enough time to get into the flow. I mean, look at your team, OBJ. By the end of the season, he seemed to have a lot better chemistry in that offense than he did at the beginning, and he had the benefit of being a veteran NFL player who also got to go through a normal off season. We've seen in the past couple of years teams that elected not to play any of their starters, including new players during the preseason, have a real rough start to the regular season. I just think that's going to be something that'll be interesting to watch because when you eliminate all these things, usually the first preseason game of the year for all the teams is almost abhorrent to watch at times because, they're barely using any of the playbook. They don't always look like they know what they're doing. By the time you get to the third one, they're trying to do a regular season preview, and then you see some guys getting some energy. I think it's going to be a really different situation. They also don't have the NFL banned this training camp season where the teams have joint practices. And that had been a big thing that was also a great way for even if you're not getting game reps, you're getting reps against other teams, you're getting to build yourself up. So that all these kind of things that we've typically seen that have enabled guys to get into the flow and to get ready for a season have all been truncated. And it's going to be interesting to see, what are those September games going to be like? Is it going to be like some early AAF football games where you're sitting there going, this is not what I was expecting to see.
Yeah, I'm with you there, Matt. That the coronavirus. You didn't say it, these are not your words; they're my words. But the current situation makes it more difficult. So maybe I'm giving my own opinion with parts of yours in there. The current situation makes it more difficult. I do think that in the long run, in 2021, two preseason games is not that bad. I think. Right now, we need the games. Right now, we need the practice. We need all the time we can get because we're so limited in time. But moving forward in a normal world, I don't think that it's that bad. I think it's good. I think it's good because it's extra wear. You're right. We need time to see those stars burst onto the scene. Alvin Kamara, and I mean, if we're talking about fantasy football, Alvin Kamara went undrafted in my home league. I mean, totally did not get drafted. He was the first waiver wire pickup in a startup league. It was my home league. That's a good example of a guy who burst onto the scene in preseason. So I agree with you. This year is a little bit different, but I agree with you 100%. It's just this one caveat is that this year is a little bit different.
I still think the sweet spot for preseason probably is 3. I agree. 4 is probably too many. And next year there is when we get the additional regular season game. We get the extra playoff team this year, but they aren't lengthening the season in 2020. I think when you're talking about lengthening the season, it makes sense that you'd wheel at least one off. I just wonder about 2. If we're still going to have 90-man preseason rosters that cut down to 53 or 55, and you only have 8 quarters to try to get rookies integrated in, try to get people that you signed as free agents integrated into playing time, and try to figure out if any of the people from roster spot 45 to 90 is worth being on your team. Yeah. That's where I feel a little bit bad. I guess my heart goes out to those guys that are really just scrapping to make a team. One of the proud things for Denver that I've always loved is they have an incredible track record of always bringing in an undrafted free agent. Chris Harris Jr. was an undrafted free agent that they found in the preseason process. Shaq Barrett was an undrafted free agent we found in the preseason process. C.J. Anderson, who, you guys may have various opinions. I always loved his heart, and, we don't win Super Bowl 50 without him. I just think those are some guys that maybe don't get the chance.
The one thing the reason I say I think they will is because there's still all that talk about them with them limiting the preseason games, going to like those split practices or the team practices where they get together. I think that they'll use those more as like scrimmages and games to kind of help prepare each other, because you're not just running against your same team. And there was even talks about them possibly like putting some of those practices live when it's like if the Patriots and Texans get together like they did a couple years ago and doing that. So I would think that they'll use those practices maybe for your starters, and then hopefully the preseason games for those fringe guys like you were just talking about, to see, hey, are any of these guys worth keeping around, or vice versa. But I do think I kind of agree with you, Matt. I think 3 is kind of the sweet spot, because you can still keep the method that they've used the past couple years where, hey, the first game you guys get like a drive or two. Second game, a little bit longer. Than that third game, you usually see the starters out there a lot longer. And then we never see anybody play in the fourth game. It's those guys that you were just talking about. But for us, mostly, we're not watching them. We are, because we're football diehards. But other people I'm not watching this because it's bad football or whatever. So we like watching those games. I do think that 3 is probably the perfect number, but I wouldn't be upset if they went down to 2 like Tony was talking about, because I think they're going to get all that work in those joint practices as well. Dennis, you've been really quiet down there. You got anything to say? Still stunned.
My dog came in. He recently had ear surgery, and I think he just had his meds, and he's been snoring. So
Hey, there's nothing wrong with that.
Hey,
I'm hoping
he wouldn't be the first one to snore through talk about preseason. Although, given the current state of sports, I would give anything to watch a 4th week preseason game right now.
Yes. You're absolutely right. Yes.
All there for that. All right. So my question then would be twofold. Teams like I'm trying to think of who else outside of the Saints, the Rams. Who else? The Chiefs, Seattle. I'm trying to think of who else in the AFC. The fucking Ravens. The Ravens. Those guys, I think, all now with the way that we just talked about this preseason going, come in now with an inherent advantage because their systems are in place. All of these guys, they have most of their teams returning, quarterbacks returning, offensive coordinators. But what about a guy like Tom Brady? Because while he's a veteran, he's been through it all, and we've heard Bruce Arians say that he's kind of making his system kind of built around Tom Brady, but it's still a new system with new teammates and new everything. No. So do you think it's going to hurt Brady, or because he's just a GOAT, he's going to be fine?
No.
Tony, you go ahead.
No, Tom Brady's the GOAT. And listen, I hate to say this. I'm a Colts fan.
Could you mute that guy?
It makes me want to throw up.
I can just kick him off really quick.
Can you hear me? Hello?
Yeah,
can you hear me?
You're good.
I know. Listen, here's the reality. Tom Brady's a GOAT. I don't like to admit it. I'm a Colts fan. But they're talking about doing a 12-man set. I mean, give them 2 tight ends. There's plenty of running backs to cycle through. They'll find a running back that works, whether it's Jones or Vaughn. I don't know. I think it's going to be Jones, by the way, but that's not the point.
Speaking of which, I have to humbly admit that I actually drafted Ronald Jones in a dynasty league today. I feel like I've spent too much time with Matt. I'm drafting Baker Mayfield. I'm drafting Ronald Jones. I don't even know who I am anymore.
I drafted Jones in the Listener Dynasty League without hesitation.
Think about a time in the past. Think about the last time that Tom Brady has had that offense available to him. I mean, think about it. Come on. Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, OJ Howard, Rob Gronkowski. I mean,
OJ Howard doesn't deserve to be put in that sentence, sir.
We were talking about OJ Howard being a supreme breakout tight end in fantasy football last year.
Who was talking about?
That must have been your show.
Yeah.
It was not my
Let's be careful about who we're lumping in here.
My article on Dynasty Nerds said how he wouldn't be. But
let's keep that in that down corner there about OJ Howard breaking out.
But the talent's there. I wrote the article that said it wouldn't happen because of the system. But now if they're talking about moving to 12-man personnel, I mean, come on, guys. Tom Brady's running the show now. This is not Jameis Winston. This is not Bruce Arians. I mean, Tom Brady's running the show, and it's already been proven. They're running a 12-man personnel. They got 2 tight ends running with Chris Godwin, Mike Evans, and there's a white guy in the slot. What's his name?
No, they're going to put
Justin Watson.
Yes,
Tyler Johnson isn't white.
Scotty Miller.
Scotty Miller. That's who I was thinking of. I mean, they've got everything they need for Tom Brady to have his offense. I mean, it's Tom Brady's offense. What was the question? I forgot the question.
See, I'm kind of with you. Like
new year, new offense.
I'm with you a little bit in that if we were talking about veteran, off-season moves who might be impacted by this, I wouldn't necessarily target veteran quarterbacks like Brady or Rivers. Rivers, it's going to be a system he's familiar with. Brady, they're doing things around him. Plus, the quarterback has the ball in his hands all the time and has a mastery of the playbook usually that other people don't have. If you're talking about free agents that we think might pop that maybe will have a slow start because of this, I think about somebody like Emmanuel Sanders, who – the complexities of the New Orleans system and not having time building rapport with Drew Brees and also probably never having met Drew Brees in person and throwing him under the bus on Twitter last week. Those kind of things might set them back. But, running backs, wide receivers, tight ends, trying to learn a system and learn chemistry with the quarterback, I think is going to be more of a struggle than some of those veteran quarterbacks that are changing teams because, everything runs through the quarterback. It's not like they have to wonder if they're going to get a snap.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting. I also think it hurts teams like my guys back here in the Browns. A new system, new head coach, new everything.
Yeah, and those are the ones that – because typically when you get a new head coach, you get an extra mini camp just because you have a first-year head coach. Yeah. And we didn't get any mini camps. So, like, Cleveland, Carolina, everybody's excited. I know you're excited about Matt Rule. I was listening to the NFL – Sirius Radio the other day, and he said he's only met like 10 of his players on his 90-man roster. He's only met 10 of them. And I'm like, damn, that's harsh. Like,
that's not good.
I hope he meets them all when training camp starts. But how do you, guys, and he's been a good head coach somewhere, but not at the end. He hasn't been an NFL head coach, so it's even a brand new experience, whereas, some of the retread head coaches that got hired in new places, like Mike McCarthy, will probably have an easier time not having an off season than Matt Rule or Joe Judge or Stefanski, who are getting to step into that role the first time. It's going to be an interesting year, I think, from that respect, and I think that's why you've seen player values all over the board from people, because sometimes we're not. Somebody pointed out on radio. Because you don't have these rookie mini camps or these mini camps or guys doing OTAs, you're not even getting that kind of flood of rumors about what guys look like. You're basically jumping on any self-filmed workout that pops up on Twitter. Like I saw today, they showed Jerry Jeudy running cones in a park, and people are like, "Oh, he's just ready. He's going to tear the NFL up." And it's like, he's running around cones in a park, guys. Let's hold our optimism. I don't think he's
the game is changing, Matt. The game is changing.
Yeah, like Ronald Jones' body catch there, and
that was
whatever
a good body catch. Hey, I love that body catch.
I mean, I'd rather him catch it with his hands.
I would rather that. I would rather that.
All right. You guys have anything else, or you guys want to wrap it up? This is mostly supposed to be about old Archie there. So anything else?
Let's wrap it up.
Yeah, I'm ready to go. I appreciate you guys. Thank you for having me again.
Absolutely. Everybody check it. We'll be back on Monday with the rest of the NFC East, Giants and Washington. We'll look forward to talking to you guys then. Everybody have a good weekend.
Right on.
Bye, guys.
Yeah.